How's it going, math secondary administrators and teachers? My name is Justin Robichaux with the Math Department and the Division of Academics. And today we're going to review some data following Interim 2 on ANET, as well as looking ahead to the Interim 3 ANET and kind of steps that we can take to make sure we close the year out effectively. If you need access to this presentation, the bit.ly is on the screen, bit.ly/SEC Math Data Feb 23. There will also be a QR code on the next slide, and there it is. So again, today's agenda is going to kind of go over what our math data is telling us, and that is from Interim 2, as well as looking ahead to Interim 3. Also, what steps can we take between Interim 2 and Interim 3? We'll also wrap up with some Dreambox data at the very end. I'll leave this slide open for a second because I want to make sure anybody that needs to scan that QR code can do so. Keep in mind also, since this is a recording, you always could pause, rewind if you realize that later that you would like it. There are a lot of live links in this presentation, so it really is of a benefit to make sure you have it in front of you for all the things that we will get to in a second. All right, so keeping in line with our district's motto this year, nothing is impossible, we wanted to kind of show you the roadmap for how we can effectively look at Interim 2 data, improve for Interim 3, and then also look ahead to our LEAP assessment. The instructional focus for this school year from the Division of Academics is to work with administrators on teachers around planning, implementation, and assessing and adjusting. From the Math Department's perspective, our focus is to work on implementing consistent reasoning and problem-solving skills throughout our district. All right, so let's look at Interim 2 data. Overall, these are the average scores at each grade level. And because this is a secondary video, we will have 6th through Algebra 2 for all of our ANET information. And for LEAP, we will have 6th through Geometry. If you are a combination school, there is also a video that accompanies this one that focuses on elementary and 3rd through 5th. It's the same formatting of the video. It just has 3rd through 5th data sets and ideas, whereas this one will have secondary. So let's get through it. All right, so our average score in 6th grade was at 35%. Again, on the right-hand side, I won't read all of those, but those are the standards of deficit at each grade level. And once we get into a few more slides, we'll kind of show you how you can address those standards. In 7th grade, our average score was 32%. In 8th grade, our average score was also 32%. In Algebra 1, we were at 35%. At Geometry, we were at 29%. And at Algebra 2, we were at 18% as our average score per student. So now that we have the data, and now that you have your school level data, because again, all the items that I'm showing you are going to be district level data sets. You have your own school level and probably in a lot of instances, class and student level data. Everything that I'm about to show you are ways that you can take your individual data sets and make informed instructional decisions around them. So the first thing we want to focus on is the Interim 2 EBR standards data. I'll show you how to use this document as well as how to make it your own. When you open it, it defaults to 3rd grade. I do want to draw your attention to the bottom of the page. At the bottom is how you can scroll through multiple grade levels. Because this is a secondary video, we will focus on one grade level. We will focus on Algebra 1. It makes it easier because most middle schools have Algebra 1 and all high schools are going to have Algebra 1. That way we can speak a common language. So again, if I'm a 6th grade teacher, I can click on 6th grade and all the data sets are 6th grade. But for the purpose of today, we will look at Algebra 1 and we will talk through what all the columns mean. And again, whatever you see on this Algebra 1, you'll have for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade if that's the subject that you teach. But again, this is just an overview for how to use a document. So what I'm looking at here is the data sets from Interim 2, from the second interim that we took in January. It shows on the left-hand side the standards that were assessed. It shows in the second column, it shows what percent did students correctly guess or correctly answer the questions for that standard. In the third column, it shows you which questions on the test correlated to that standard. The next column shows you within our Eureka curriculum, where can we find that standard? And then the following column would just show you the impact on the LEAP, again, knowing that it's a supporting, an additional, or a major content standard. So now let's get into some of the nuts and bolts of this document. So what do I have at my disposal? Well, the first column, you've got all the standards. So by clicking on any standard that you see in this document, it will take you to our standards at a glance page. On this page, it will identify the standard. It will show you what the state of Louisiana thinks of that standard from the companion document. It will identify what the standard means. It will provide some examples for that standard. It will have the components of rigor and any remediation standards that need to be taught in order for students to be successful on that standard. This standard has no achievement level descriptor, but most of our standards do. And in that instance, it will show you what advanced level work would look like, what mastery level work would look like, basic, and then below basic level work. The final piece to this document that we think is really impactful for our secondary campuses is going to be these two. If you are at the Algebra 1, Geometry, or Algebra 2 level, you'll have now this section right here that focuses on Math Nation. And it will tell you exactly which sections and topics identify with that standard. The other piece that all standards have is the ANET released items. By clicking on that, it will take you to a PDF that has all of the ANET released items for that standard. So for ACED 1, it's a PDF document that opens up and has 29 pages. Within this, you would be able to look and see all of the released items from ANET that correlate to that standard. This is done in a print-based format to give you an idea. However, schools and teachers can assign these questions by using ANET and creating an assessment that has just this particular standard on it. Now, because this document is 29 pages, I don't think it's probably a wise idea to give them all the standards found within CED1, but definitely if you wanted to get a checkpoint read on how your students are improving in CED1 after reteaching, after small group instruction, then definitely using ANET's platform or Math Nation would be very viable options. So again, that is found under standards-based resources for all of our standards. And again, that is called ANET released items for that particular standard. And again, Math Nation section and topics are also available. As I said before, all I did was click on the standard assessed and it took me to that page. Later in this presentation, I will show you how to get to our standards at a glance document much easier. That way you have access to all the standards and not just those that were assessed on ANET Interim 2. The next column then shows you the percent correct for each standard. So we're focusing on CED1 and algebra. And the percent correct on Interim 2 was 36%. That was an increase of 3% from last year's Interim 2 when CED1 was also assessed. As you can see, we have that for all standards. Now I want to draw your attention to BF3. BF3 just has a percent and it doesn't have a plus or a minus. That's because BF3 was not assessed last year on our Interim 2. As you can recall, we increased the size of our interim assessments, and that was done primarily to make sure we had a plethora of data sets around our standards, and we also had the ability to assess more standards. Now, in Algebra 1, there was only one additional standard that was assessed on Interim 2. If I go to 6th grade, you'll see that there was 2 additional standards that were assessed this year as opposed to last year. 7th grade had 4 standards. So we have data sets for 4 more standards this year that we didn't have last year for this assessment. And as you can notice for 7th grade, NS1, NS1D, NS2, and RP1 are all major content standards. So we made the decision to make sure that we had more standards being assessed, so we had more data sets to make sure that as we got closer to ANET 3 and the LEAP assessment, we had a lot more data sets that we could really make informed decisions around. So let's go back to my Algebra 1 document just to stay consistent. So again, that's in this second column that says percent correct. And again, it's showing you percent correct on Interim 2, and then a plus or minus would indicate if it's an increase or a decrease from last year's Interim 2. I would highly suggest that when you get this document to make a copy, make it your own. You can input your school level data, your class level data. That way, when you're looking at it, you're not comparing always what the district did, but you're looking specifically at what you did. If your school did much better in CED1 than the district, then that may not be an area of deficit. So it's very important that you have your data sets for the standards so you know which standards are most valuable to you. The next column is questions on the test. Here we've identified which question each standard corresponded to on the assessment. By clicking on questions on the test, it will take you to the analysis guide. The analysis guide would then allow you to say, all right, I know CED1 was question number 3. So if we go to question number 3, here is CED1. And again, it gives you the description of the standard, but then it also shows you exactly what the question was. Yeah, don't want to do that. It gives you exactly what the question was. Now, again, the best part about that is it asks you the question, shows you the question, as well as possible distractors that students may have interacted with. So you know best how to tackle small group instruction or remediation for this standard. And again, that is found on each of our standards documents, CED1, % correct, then the question on the test. Clicking on questions on a test gives you access. And as I said before, all of the documents, 8th grade teacher, it's right there. 7th grade teacher, it's right there. So you'll see it on all of them. The final 2 columns we'll move through pretty quickly. Column E identifies where within Eureka that standard can be found. And again, that's good for a few reasons. One, if you're going to pull a small group or if you're going to work with a small group around that standard, this is kind of where you can go back to pull some ideas and resources. And then the final column shows you the impact on the LEAP. So CED1 is a major content standard. So let's get back into our presentation. Again, if you have access to this presentation, please, please, please make sure you do, because that link is live and it takes you right to that resource. If you don't have access, rewind the video a little bit, go back to that QR code, scan it, and that will help. All right, the final 2 documents, I won't go over the companion document. I'll show it to you briefly, but that is found on our standards at a glance page. So there's really not too much we have to go over more. The one that I did want to go over is the assessment guide. If you're familiar with your grade level and you've been doing it for a couple of years, you know this is what the State Department releases at the beginning of every school year to kind of give you just a breakdown of what the LEAP assessment would look like. If we're going to stick with Algebra 1, then we'll click on the Algebra 1 link. It will take you to the assessment guide for Algebra 1. The guide includes the purpose of the test, which is pretty much consistent for all of them. But where it starts to differ is when you get into the assessment design. It will show you the different types of tasks. And then it will also show you which reporting categories associate with each type. It will show you the subcategories for each of those types. It will also then show you the standards associated with it. And maybe one of the most important is going to be on page 4 at the very bottom, where it shows you the test design and it tells you how long students will have to interact. It will tell you which components have a calculator, which components don't have a calculator. It kind of walks you through a lot of important details that I would say are very key for teachers and administrators to be equipped with to ensure that they are preparing students appropriately for the LEAP assessment. And again, that is found through our LDOE assessment guide page. All of them are linked there. I'll show you how to find it. You know how to find it in the document. It's right here under assessment guides, but it's also linked through our bit.ly EBR math resources, and we'll go over that at the end of this presentation. The companion document is found within the standards at a glance. So again, there's no need to go here if you're looking at the standards at a glance document. By clicking on this, it will give you all the Algebra 1 standards through the companion document. It's a very easy to navigate document. But again, we would recommend going to standards at a glance because that gives you the companion document, the achievement level descriptors, and those released items from ANET, as well as those Math Nation topics. So those are the 3 big pillars that will really help you plan for how to address those standards. So my guess is at some point that you're watching this video is around the Mardi Gras break, either a little before or a little after. If you are in that window, then we are around 40 instructional days left in the school year before we get to the LEAP assessment in late April, early May. So what are our next steps to make sure that we get our students as prepared as possible? Well, the first thing is students should be taking our end of module assessments. This is not something that is going to be the only reason that students do well or poor in the LEAP assessment. However, it does equip you, the teacher, with more data sets. It also exposes the students to LEAP-like problems after the module that they have just completed in Eureka. So it's just one more layer that we really think is going to help our students and our schools grow in math. The second piece that will really help is to monitor pacing. And I know we say that a lot, but the reason behind that is we can't get to the end of the school year and be 20 days behind or 10 days behind. Because what that means is we just didn't teach the last 20 days of lessons that need to be taught. So if we are behind, then we have to make an instructional pacing calendar that allows us the opportunity to make informed instructional decisions around how we are going to get from point A to the end of the school year. If you ever need assistance with that, we walked the principals through that process a couple weeks ago at the principals meeting. But if you are a teacher and you're like, I have to have a better sense of where I need to be at the end of the school year, and you know you're a little behind and you want extra help, please don't hesitate to reach out to our department. The very last slide will go over all of our email addresses and how to get in contact. We love working with teachers on any problems you may have. Pacing at this point of the year is a big one. So please, 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 if you need our resources, please don't hesitate to reach out. The third thing is make sure to use the EBR math resources. We feel like we put together a strong list of resources that can really help teachers, students, and administrators prepare for the ANET Interim 3 as well as the LEAP assessment. So I'm going to click on EBR math resources. You probably have already seen this. This is our bit.ly/EBR math resources, and it's a one-stop hub for all of our documents that we kind of put out. So the ones that we talked about so far today are the EBR math standards at a glance. And as I said before, by clicking on that, if you're an Algebra 1 teacher, if you go to Algebra 1, then these are all the Algebra 1 standards and all the Algebra 1 standards at a glance. So bookmark this page. That way, whenever you have a problem with any standard, or if you want to learn more about those standards, easily you can get to any of them by clicking on them. Just so you can see it wasn't certain ones, you've got the companion level, the companion document, the achievement level descriptor, as well as those ANET released items in the Math Nation section associated with that standard. So again, very valuable resource. And again, that's our standards at a glance. I got way too many things over right now. All right. The other things that we kind of wanted to hit on were the bell ringers, found right here. The showcase tasks, again, those help with constructive response, RDW, in the feedback process. The last one that we'll get into in a second is going to be our ANET documents, and that's found here. But once we get to it in the presentation, we'll go through it. But again, this bit.ly right here, EBR Math Resources, is a very valuable one to have. I bookmark it, have it on my page. So again, that document will give you your bell ringer, showcase tasks, standard at a glance. All right. So you've done all those things so far. So what's the other piece? Well, the other piece is making sure that we are pulling strategic small groups. Strategic small groups are those that are designed to be pulled to the back table, pulled to a side table, pulled wherever they are doing their small group work. We need to make sure that we are pulling those individual students or assigning topics to those students for a specific reason. You have an extensive data set from ANET Interim 2. You have a lot of standards-based results for your students. By assigning them Zern lessons, by providing Dreambox opportunities, by providing them with Eureka materials for those standards, or by providing them with opportunities to work in Math Nation on the specific topic and sections that they need to, those are targeted small group center activities that can help students grow over these final 40 days. If you are someone that needs more assistance with assigning Zern lessons, there is a link here that will take you to the how. And Zern is something that is really only going to be intended for our 1st through 8th grade students. So if you're an Algebra 1 teacher, Zern is probably not for you. But if you're 6th, 7th, and 8th, then Zern definitely can fit some of those needs. Dreambox and Math Nation. Math Nation would be the go-to if I'm an Algebra 1 or geometry teacher. If I know what the standard of deficit is, I'm looking it up in the standards at a glance, and then I'm making sure students are on Math Nation working on that section and topic that correlates to that standard, or I'm pulling ANET released items to have them work on that, or I'm getting them back into the Eureka module and lessons that work on that standard. All right, everything we talked about so far has been reactive to Interim 2, so now let's get proactive for Interim 3. Interim 3 begins on March 13th and it runs through March 29th. We would love for everybody to make sure that they have the ANET EBR math documents ready to go as we look ahead to Interim 3, and I'm going to show you in a second what that document can help you with. It can be found in our bit.ly, which I just referenced and showed you where to find it, or you have the document, this presentation, then you can just click on the picture there and it'll take you directly to it. So the standards that we just discussed a second ago, where it had every grade level, how the students did on the standards, so on and so forth, that could be found right here. Because that was during our cycle 2, our winter interim assessment, winter interim standards right there. And it'll take you to that spreadsheet that we showed you. But since we're going to focus now on interim 3, we're living in this world. Spring interim documents, March 13th through the 29th. We'll stick with Algebra 1. So we don't have data sets for it, but as soon as we get the data back in late March, early April, we'll update spring math standards data right there for the district. But here you have all of your preview documents. You have a preview for the math interim. You have a preview for each grade level. So if we look at Algebra 1, these are the standards that will be assessed on this final interim. So again, the window is the 13th through the 29th, and these are the standards. Clicking on any one of those standards will take you to the standards at a glance page, which again tells you more about that standard and has all those released items. This document also has the reference sheet that students will have access to for that assessment, as well as the topic descriptions for this assessment. Each ANET tested course has this, so please use this document. We have over a month and a half. If you're at the beginning of that Mardi Gras window, you have over a month and a half until you'll be taking that assessment. So please make sure that you've utilized this document to look ahead to interim 3. All right, so we'll wrap up with Dreambox. I can't stress this enough. Dreambox focuses on K-8 standards. However, if you have students in your Algebra 1, Geometry, or Algebra 2 class who do not have all of their K-8 standards mastered, then Dreambox can work for them. Students are asked to get on 45 to 75 minutes per week, but the main focus is completing 5 lessons. If they complete 5 lessons, that pretty much equates that time allotment. There are 3 reports that teachers can be pulling: the usage report, the Dreambox Predictive Insight Report, or DPI, and the progress report. Usage, just like it says, it shows how many students are using it and what their average weekly lesson accumulation is. That is a report that, as a classroom teacher, I would probably pull weekly. DPI, if students are using the platform enough, shows how they're going to do on the state assessment. That report only comes out once a month, so you have to pull that at the beginning of the month in order to gain access to it. The last one that I would be pulling is the progress, and that shows how much of the Dreambox platform students have mastered at their grade level. That also, like the DPI, only comes out once per month. All right, so we want to just reflect and review and celebrate some of our schools that are in the top 10 in the calendar year of 2023, so from January through February so far. These are schools that have averaged the most lessons during that time frame. So we wanted to give a shout out to River Oaks, who leads the way with 7.8 lessons per week. Coming in second is Cedar Crest Southmore, Wildwood, Belfair Montessori, which has a middle school component, Woodlawn Middle. Woodlawn Middle, we are very proud to say that you all are the highest middle school, 6.6 average lessons per week for their students, and they're averaging an hour and 35 minutes. So congratulations to the staff of Woodlawn Middle. Broadmoor Elementary, another shout out to our middle school at Southeast, 6.2 lessons per week in the year 2023, right behind Woodlawn Middle for that middle school distinction. So great job, Southeast Middle. University Terrace, Melrose, and Northeast Elementary round out our top 10. This is some grade level usage data, as you can see, and these numbers are higher than last year, so great job to our middle schools. 6th grade, 85% of our 6th graders are utilizing Dreambox, 82% of our 7th graders, and 80% of our 8th graders. Now, this is where we see the big dip, and I think a lot of this has to do with high schools not thinking that Dreambox is for their students. But again, my major push would be is that it helps build some of the standards that students needed to have before they got to high school. So if you have students struggling in Algebra 1 or struggling in intensive supports for Algebra 1, Dreambox is perfect for that because it really targets standards that maybe teachers are not addressing in the classroom that were missed before they got to your campus. So right now we have 14% of our 9th graders using Dreambox in 2023, 7% of our 10th graders, and then 4% of our 11th and 12th graders. So what are our next steps moving forward? Well, the first thing is to make sure that we keep monitoring that pacing. The goal is to make sure that once we get to that spring break timeline in April, that we have completed all of the standards that students will need for the LEAP assessment. This next thing is make sure we're prepped for interim 3. We gave you a few documents that we feel like will really help you on that journey. The window to take that test is March 13th through the 29th. And then to continue utilizing Dreambox, Zern, and MathNation as supplemental math resources. In closing, I wanted to thank all of our math teachers, our principals, administrators, everybody that helps us do what we do. I also wanted to thank our content trainers as well as our math coaches in the schools. Again, without them, we're not able to see the gains we're able to see. If you need to contact any of our content trainers or your coach on campus, please do so. You have my supervisor's email address right here, Justin Robichaux, which is jrobichaux@ebrschools.org. On the right-hand side, you'll see our secondary content trainers. Miss Roberts is over our middle schools, and Miss Cage is over our high schools. Their contact information is there as well. If you are a combo school, you've also got an elementary component. On the left-hand side, you'll see Miss LaTrenda Knighton. She is over our elementary schools. The other piece is underneath EBR Math Department. You'll see the website. As I told you before, this would be the link that goes straight to our bit.ly. Well, as always, thanks for everything you do to make EBR a great place to learn and work. Have a great day.